TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. Welcome to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you so much, Tom. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. We're all about trucking, the news, information, comedy, and music truckers want to hear. Our guest today is the founder and president of Real Women in Trucking, Desiree Wood. The organization's mission is to deliver highway safety through leadership, mentorship, education, and advocacy. Welcome, Desiree. I really appreciate you being here today. I've been reading about some of your background. You've had quite the career. I'm really impressed. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about Real Women in Trucking and how everything began?
Hi, everybody. Well, thank you for inviting me, first of all. And, I became a truck driver in 2007. And I was really taken aback by how unsafe the training was, that they trained truck drivers this way and sort of pushed them through this system so fast. I happened to go to a CDL school that then sort of farmed out the students to this company in Tennessee. I don't know if you want me to name names, but basically they have a business model that has students doing team freight. What I came to know is that they use the students because team drivers demand more money than inexperienced drivers. So the students don't know that, and they sign on thinking they're going to learn something, but in fact they're doing this really dangerous job performance. Being a single woman entering, not part of an established team, put me in sort of a precarious situation with a number of co-drivers, men and women, and some were not just unsafe because they were pushing me through the training and not really teaching me anything. It was also winter, so I went from South Florida to the mountains and in snow, and I didn't even really know how to do a safe lane change.
Oh, that'd be challenging. Wow.
Yeah, and I found out this was the pattern and practice of these fleets. But then there was also the question of being on a truck with a man that I don't know, and some very sticky situations occurred, potentially very violent. And I came to learn that a lot of women had been raped and assaulted during their training. Mm-hmm. I questioned why nobody had spoken out about it. I learned there was another women's trucking organization that had recently formed. I joined them, asked for their assistance. They revoked my membership. And so we started our own organization. Their organization, we came to learn, has sponsors that are the offensive carriers. They are not truck drivers. So we started our own, and we are formed by drivers, working women drivers, and we don't take any corporate sponsors. So we're small, but we get a lot done.
So what type of activities, what do you do? Do you have speaking engagements across the country? Do you have educational programs to create awareness and enlist maybe more members and to help out women that have encountered this sort of thing?
Yes. So we started out as like a protest group. Social media was our platform, which has helped tremendously get our message out. The industry itself, I learned, is an establishment that the main trade publications, they don't want to talk about our issues because you're not part of their club. Mm-hmm. So I just started going outside the industry using social media. I've been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Cosmopolitan. Dan Rather interviewed me. We are right now in the process of a full-length feature documentary about our organization and what we've done. We've gone to Washington, D.C. for several different things. Have we been able to get as much done as we wanted to? No. We did start learning events at the truck shows, Great American Truck Show in Dallas, which y'all know got canceled this year and is canceled next year. But the last few years, we hosted a lawyer Q&A that was attended by top lawyers that deal with sexual harassment, wage theft, misclassification of drivers, and so forth, to teach drivers about their rights and protections so that they can advocate for themselves. And we use YouTube to post videos and excerpts of those learning materials. We have YouTube. We haven't posted a lot of videos lately. Women Truckers Network is the one for real women in trucking. And then I had started it back in, I think, 2008 on Trucker Desiree, which is my handle on social media. But Twitter was basically the one that I really got a lot of exposure from.
I saw that you've got a lot of followers.
It's kind of funny because my followers have remained stagnant over the last few years, but I think that's because there's been a lot of bots that have gotten on Twitter. And it's funny because when they're trolls or bots that I can tell they're not real accounts. Mm-hmm. They follow, I'm like the first person they follow, like within their first 50, they follow me. And I'm like, why am I popping up to a lot of these bot accounts? It's a very interesting, but one thing I'd really like truck drivers to know that are on Twitter to pay attention to is when I started, I got a huge voice through Twitter because the trucking establishment couldn't control it and they couldn't figure it out. And I figured it out. That is how I got a foothold into this. But now I'm starting to see a lot of fake truck driver accounts. They're not real people. They're just like the fake porno bots and the fake Patriot account bots. Now they're fake truck driver accounts. So I feel like truck drivers that are on Twitter really need to pay attention because there is a mobilization to silence them, just like you were silenced before social media. And social media has been very powerful for drivers to be able to talk back outside the cab of their truck.
Right.
And mainstream media are listening. They're starting to be able to tell the difference between a trucking lobby group that represents fleets and an actual driver, worker.
Right.
And that's so important.
You're giving people a voice. It's. I don't think a lot of people are aware that these problems exist, because I think you're correct. They keep it kind of on the DL.
Desiree, let me ask you this. What inspired you to get in trucking to start with? Was that a family thing or,
No, it wasn't. And I came to trucking like a lot of people come to trucking because I didn't know where else to go.
Okay.
My dad was a commercial fisherman. I grew up on commercial fishing boats. He was also an iron worker. My mother took me out of school when I was 12 and we traveled around to Indian reservations. I have traveled a lot as a kid, not out of privilege, but just because there was a lot of turmoil in my childhood. And as an adult, I want to move all the time. I have a very restless spirit, and I had a very difficult time finding a job where I was satisfied with going to the same place every day.
Sure.
So I worked in the hotel industry at one point, and I loved the change every day of the hotel industry, but the pay just kind of crashed through the floor. So I had sort of a midlife crisis, empty nest syndrome meltdown when I was in my early 40s. And I don't even know how many years it's been now, 10 years. Yeah. And, my kids went off on their own and all this stuff happened all at once. And I actually became homeless at one time. And my friend came and she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do something where I'm moving and where I'm able to take all the skills I have in life and do it for something purposeful. And I've been looking at these trucks and I think I can do it. I mean, I grew up on commercial boats. I know how to work hard. And so that was sort of the first idea about it. And we went and looked at CDL schools, not knowing that there is an industry of students in trucking that makes money off exploiting people.
Wow.
So that's how it started.
What a rude awakening, but it's a good thing you got in there because now you're helping other people and you're creating awareness. It's not talked about. And this is a place where women can go and have a voice, and that's always a good thing. And getting a second career in trucking, that's actually what a lot of people do from what I understand. And gosh, now you've got the freedom. Your office changes every day.
Yes.
Anyway, you're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. We're talking to Desiree Wood, founder and president of Real Women in Trucking. This is Shelley Johnson. I'm with Tom Kelly. TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station. Founder and president of Real Women in Trucking. Desiree, you've got a really compelling message here. I guess if I was a woman listening, I'd want to know what type of help does your group provide women truckers?
Well, we, over time of trying to put all of this together, put together a frequently asked questions section because we find a lot of women don't even know where to start and they go right down the wrong path. They go on Google and they Google something like, how do I become a truck driver? And they find the top 5 worst places to go. And then they call us when they're having problems later. So our goal is to try to get them to start out on the right foot with the frequently asked questions. And then they'll start off on a path to success rather to failure. We want them to look for a community college program, not a CDL mill, which their CDL mills are everywhere. Community college program is longer and more thorough, and you may likely get a grant to go to it if you go through the financial aid office or ask for some help with your workforce office in your state. Then you'll be able to have your CDL in your hand. A company-sponsored program, you're going to have to go through this really fast track, and your CDL is tied to them. So if something bad happens in your training that you just cannot stay through it, you're being terrorized by your trainer or co-driver, or being sexually harassed, or in such a dangerous situation, you're like, I can't do this, I'm going to die. You have this contract over your head that you cannot get out of. If they start harassing you, they put it on your credit, they blackball you from getting hired elsewhere. It's terrible. So that is really the most important thing, is choosing the right CDL school, but also finding the finishing school that you're planning on going to and making sure that they will even hire you from the CDL school that you went to. Because if you went to a bad one, you're going to be stuck going to a bad finishing school. And if you're doing company-sponsored training, you basically are signing on to an indentured servitude operation that could be leaving you with a useless CDL because you have to abandon training.
So Do you provide maybe a list of places? You said you recommend the community colleges and so forth. I would imagine that you have a place where women can go when they're saying, hey, I'm in this situation. What do I do? What are the alternatives if once they've signed up for this and obviously they're not being educated?
Yeah.
How does your group, does it help the women kind of negotiate maybe the contract and get out of the situation and maybe be able to tell somebody, hey, this is what's happening here?
Well, that's kind of the hard part. I mean, the abuse is so widespread in this industry. It's like bailing out the Titanic with a styrofoam cup. There's so many driver groups that have students coming to them for help. All of us are overwhelmed. We work a lot with the She Trucking Sisterhood group founded by Sheree Moore. A lot of the students are now helping each other on that page, sometimes with really bad advice, but sometimes some of the older gals are giving them some good advice. If they listen to it, that's a whole other thing. We try as best as we can. There is no one size fits all, unfortunately, because people are in different life situations. I mean,
Sure.
There are a lot of people that are homeless. Like this is the way to get a roof over their head. So they're willing to put themselves in danger's path to get out of the situation they are in. And some of them make it through that and some of them don't. There's no negotiating these contracts. These companies don't care. But there are some big law firms that we have communicated with who are taking them on now. So there was just a settlement that came out about CRST, I think a few weeks ago, where some students thought they were getting free training, but in fact, that's not what it was, and they got a settlement against them. Over the course of these years, I have now become an expert witness for court cases. I am currently working on one that is a rape case and another one that's a pregnancy discrimination case, which is a federal case. I help lawyers when I get contacted by a lot of law firms, and I give them as much information as I can. We've unsealed documents in a class action sexual harassment case against CRST and make those available to other law firms to research cases. They're having to see the similarities, to see it's systematic. It's an industry-wide problem. There's a lot of enablers in the trucking establishment that have allowed this to happen. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're trying to we got a meeting last November 2019 with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to give them 9 action points to take immediate action on sexual misconduct in the entry-level driver training programs. That is under them. But their answer to us was their hands are tied by Congress, and unless Congress tells them to do this, they can't do it. That
doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah.
It doesn't, and the one thing they did do was, we had this big meeting and they had our logo up on the screen. There was like 10 or 11 people in there, and they said, that women had come to the coercion link that's on the FMCSA website to report they were sexually harassed, and that's not really what it's for. And I said, well, maybe you should put the EEOC link up on there, because there's women that are struggling to find help, and it's like a maze out there on the internet when you've been hurt. So that's why we do the best we can, but we can't get to everybody before it's too late. And we've come to know of some women who've been really violently assaulted on their trainer's truck or their co-driver's truck. And the companies don't fire the person for that. Sometimes they'll fire them for something else, like they had a beer on the truck or they had a gun on the truck, but they don't want to fire them for this sexual assault. And then the person disappears back into the population and gets a job somewhere else where they're training more students. and this record does not follow them. That this is a person that should not have another human being on the truck with them.
Absolutely. And
they shouldn't be in the truck
it's just
at all.
shocking this is going on in 2020.
It is. And the trucking industry, I mean, pretty much every industry now is like, okay, we are not like the only one in the universe where this isn't happening, but trucking is that one. They are like, like they just clutch their pearls every time, you bring this up. Like, I see the ATA saying CRST is a wonderful company and giving accolades to, these top companies that are horrible, that we get the most complaints about. We see them getting awards, and they're HR women who I know are in depositions for these rape cases, and they're giving them awards. It's like, oh, you have a rape that happened at your trucking company? Well, we'll give you an award, and then that'll be good PR for you. And then when it comes out in public, everybody will say, well, they just got an award, so that can't be true. So I see this, day in and day out. It's really frustrating.
Any hope in the change of administration with Pete Buttigieg taking over as the transportation secretary? Any hope there, you think?
Well, I have written a letter before he was named, the day before, actually. I had written a letter to President-elect Biden. It is public on our website, Real Women in Trucking, in the blog section, if anybody wants to download what we wrote with our priorities for the new administration. I was actually able to get that before the eyes of individuals on Pete Buttigieg. I hope I said his name.
Yeah, I messed it up too. But
I got it before the eyes of people on his transition team. So I know it's been read, and they replied to me and said they will be sending it to everybody on the transition team. And essentially, it talks about truck parking, which is another big thing that we've been involved in. But it also talks about this entry-level driver training sexual misconduct, the Jason's Law truck parking, which I just mentioned, detention time and driver pay, worker classification, and pregnancy discrimination. And it lets them know that, that it's not the same players as it's been. It's not just the Teamsters, OIDA, and the ATA, and women in trucking. There's other people out here, people of color, diverse people. We have the LGBTQ community in trucking, and these people need to be heard.
You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Kelly. We're talking with Desiree Wood, founder and president of Real Women in Trucking. Tom, what was the question you had for Desiree?
Well, Desiree, we were talking that one off the air, that one of the things that's not happening, not here within the trucking industry, or even across multiple industries, is that men are not leading the way for other men, and the older men especially should be counseling and letting younger men know that behavior, the behavior we've seen out of a lot of men is just inappropriate, and we need more male voices. And I'll say it, guys, you're doing it wrong. This is not the way to treat women. It's not the way to treat women. And more guys need to tell other guys that that's they're sitting around the bar and they're having a big joke about something. It's not funny.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
Yep.
And I think we're missing a great opportunity by not having celebrities and others jump up and say, looking straight into the screen on a TV PSA and say, guys, knock it off. This isn't okay. This is not okay behavior.
Said, Tom. Yep.
And we need more low voices that are talking to men who are listening to low voices saying this is not okay. And it's not just a bunch of women running around being shrill or whatever you want to say it is. That's not what this is.
Right.
Desiree has had real experiences. Shelley has had real experiences. A lot of women have a lot of things to report, and you may not like to hear it, but you know what, guys? Knock it off.
That's right. Yep.
So there, I'll stand off my soapbox for a moment, but
it's an important thing for men to, man up.
They do.
There you go.
And men listen to other men, and men watch other men for cues on what's appropriate to talk about and what's not appropriate to talk about.
Absolutely.
And, men don't walk in, sit down at a bar and say, hey, let me show you my checkbook. Mm-hmm. Why not? Well, that's inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Well, the things you're laughing about and joking around about and, let's have the latest joke about the lot lizard or whatever. No, let's not.
Not appropriate.
Not appropriate. Let's move on and talk like men, behave like men, and not, idiots.
Yeah.
Desiree, I want to commend you for having the bravery to start this organization. I imagine you had a lot of pushback, and it probably got a little bit scary.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started talking about this, I got death threats. I got death threats. I actually had people look up my background and put it out on Twitter to try to intimidate me. I got death threats on Twitter. People that I've been on there, I think, 10 years now. Yeah, maybe over 10 years. And people that have followed me from the beginning remember that. And one of them was the president of the other women's trucking organization that retweeted it. So it was that was their way that they were going to make me stop talking. But I'm tough. I grew up on the street. You're not going to, I'm like, you're only motivating me to talk more when you start threatening me. So that is the wrong way to get me to stop. In the beginning, I thought, I'll be able to give them some information, and then they'll take the ball and run with it. And then I saw, these people are just as unethical as they come. These are bad people. They have absolutely no intention of doing the right thing. They're in this to make money, and they don't really care about anybody that gets hurt. They don't care that they are saying they're celebrating women's achievements at the same time somebody from the companies that are sponsoring them are getting violently raped on a truck. And I know that for a fact because as an expert witness now, I'm seeing the dates on some of this stuff which correspond with some of the trucking shows that we were at when these and I'm like, on this day, we were in Dallas, Texas doing this thing, and this other group was doing this thing, and this woman was on a carrier's truck that sponsors them going through this. This is blows my mind, after all these years, it's stayed the same. And the men are a big thing because it's a male dominated industry. We have a lot of women that are like, they're so eager to fit in with the men that they'll throw other women under the bus just to be able to sit at the table with them. And they don't realize how that just makes the situation worse.
Sure.
So in the beginning, it was a lot of women attacking women, and then the men really didn't say a lot. But there are some good men in this industry. One of them passed away. His name was Fred Schaffner, and we were on the phone one day, and he said, even if a woman is walking down the street completely naked, that is not permission to rape her or assault her. That is a big thing for men to understand, and some men don't, and a lot of women don't either. There was a guy also that wrote a blog post, I think it was Hal Kaya, a few years ago about the things that he was hearing on the CB, and that too few men were speaking up on the CB to say, don't talk to her like that. Like, she's one of our fellow drivers. Furthermore, don't talk to African-American drivers the way that you do. Like, when I have a breakdown and I'm out on the road and I encounter somebody that helps me, or vice versa, somebody's having a difficulty with their truck and they need my help and come to my help, I don't say, well, what nationality are you? Who'd you vote for? Who do you pray to? We just help each other because we're drivers. Mm-hmm. And we all have to remember that, and we all need to up our game, and we need to raise the standard about we are human beings.
That's right.
And women are not here for your entertainment. They're human beings. So there's a couple organizations that I followed outside the industry on Twitter that have helped me look at some of the data on this. One is called Stop Street Harassment. which has a lot of data on how fearful women, not just women truck drivers, but women in general, young girls, how often they are harassed on the street, just standing, like women should not be afraid to have to go walk down to the corner.
Right.
Because somebody's going to harass them or stop and try to pick them up or say something to them. And then the other one's called Men Can Stop Rape, which is men, counseling men on how to act right. Because that is a learned behavior.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you can unlearn it.
When you founded this organization, I'm sure you were absolutely shocked with the pushback you got. You were trying to create awareness, and then you found yourself probably in a position now of re-educating because people are thinking the wrong way, or they're just plain shoving it under the rug, denial, and that doesn't solve the problem. It's still there, and it's ugly.
Yeah, it is something that all of us need to take responsibility for. The enablers in this industry, especially in the established trucking trade publication media, women, a lot of women, they know from the day we were created and why. I've spoken to many of these female journalists. They will not print our name. They will not print when we have an achievement. They will not cover the story. Mm-hmm. They will cover all these fluff pieces, though, about Girl Scout patches and dolls and cartoon images of a fake person. We have cartoon images for us, too, but we're real people. Mm-hmm. And cartoon images don't talk back. And they don't age. And so we see a lot of this in this industry where they want to promote this image of women truck drivers as this like sexy, wear makeup every day. And a lot of this comes from the women in the trucking industry who aren't truck drivers. They work in the offices. They're executives. Mm-hmm. And they love saying we're women in trucking, but they're not women truck drivers. And they have this expectation of what our image is supposed to be to promote them and what they want. So this is where we get a lot of this. Well, you should fix yourself up every day. And we want everybody that is on our image team to be blonde haired. And, they think diversity is having a brunette with brown eyes. And, you have to talk about this. You can't talk about that. And so the women in this industry need to stop trying to please the men by being this, the truth is a lot of men will have more respect for you if you talk about something important.
Mm.
Yeah, and you're being real. And let's face it, who wants to wear makeup when they have to get up in a hot hour and climb into a cab?
Expensive. I'm not gonna waste my expensive makeup on diesel.
Exactly. There you go.
She smelled like diesel, but dang, she looked good. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Yeah.
We're talking to Desiree Wood, founder and president of Real Women in Trucking, here on TNCRadio.LIVE. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson here with Tom Kelly. And our guest today is Desiree Wood, founder and president of Real Women in Trucking. Desiree, you've got a compelling message and story on how you started. You've been an untiring advocate for women and their safety. I understand you also founded Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders. That was in 2019. What does that organization do?
So Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders was formed. It's a 501c3 charity. And it came as a result of truck drivers that are abandoned on the road. A lot of people don't know about this either. And it's sort of a side effect. It kind of goes hand in hand with what Real Women in Trucking encounters when we have someone that reaches out for help. But it happens to men too. And basically you work for a company and you have a falling out with them, and they'll leave you stranded. They just will come and boot you out of your truck. And as I said earlier, some of these people are homeless. They live in their truck. So when you leave them stranded, they have no way to get home. I'll give you an example. We had a gal last month in November who had a falling out with her dispatcher. He had law enforcement come to her truck at 4 a.m, kick her out of her truck with her cat and her boyfriend who was on the truck with her. He was not a driver. Left them in a little town in Colorado with no way to get home.
Oh, my.
In a town where there's no Uber, no Lyft, no taxi cab, no motels, no way to rent them a car. And so they're standing out on the street, didn't let them have time to even get their stuff out of the truck. So this happens more often than people know. A lot of people have heard of the Aero Trucking a few years ago, well, 2009, I believe, where they just shut down operations the week before Christmas Eve, and left like 1,000 drivers stranded across the United States. In any other industry, this would make national news, but in trucking, it does not get even, a blip. Aero got some. The guy actually just got out, the CEO that did it, he just got out of jail because of the coronavirus. This industry gets a lot of passes for what they do. So when these people get abandoned, for years, Real Women in Trucking, we kind of put our money together and we help people out. Sometimes they got, when they have a pet, they can't ride Greyhound. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to either get them a car rental or a U-Haul, and at least get a motel for them to think about, okay, what's the plan of attack going to be? There's sometimes they don't even have money for food. So that's what TIER was set up for, was to make it a charity where others could donate to it, and it's tax deductible. We are the recipient of donations from an umbrella organization that was set up, and we're one of 5 recipients from that organization that helps out some other trucker charity groups as well. So anyway, that's what it is. On the URL, the website is CDLTEAR, like crying, CDLTIER.org. But you can find it on Facebook too, Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders, also on Facebook. And like I said, we just started in November 2019. We got our document from the IRS, and then the pandemic happened. So one of our former board members, Dominic Oliveira, had called me and said, what are we going to do about this? None of these drivers have PPE. What are we going to do? We got to do something. So I wrote something, and it got picked up by some other channels, went out. It led to a very large cash donation that let us go out and give PPE to drivers from April all the way until, I think I was still passing it out personally myself in September, October. We were able to get masks to drivers, hand sanitizer, gloves, antiseptic wipes. We got a large donation from Uber Freight in addition to the cash donation of additional 10,000 units of PPE boxes. Stuckies, a lot of people have heard of Stuckies. Mm-hmm. They donated stuff. The granddaughter of the founder has taken over the company and called me personally, Stephanie Stuckey, and she was helped tremendously. Transfix, they donated 1,000 units of hand sanitizer. It was really awesome. So I would actually go out personally and hand the stuff out, but then members from Real Women in Trucking, they would come through where I was, and I'd load them up and say, wherever you're going, take the stuff with you and give it to drivers that don't have any. And it was really awesome. So it really helped TIER kind of get a little notice right out of the gate, and that's helped us get some donations to help drivers. We had 4 drivers in November that were left. One of them was kind of a big expense. He had some injuries, pretty bad injuries, and he needed to stay where he was. His boss fired him when he wouldn't drive anymore. And he likely had some internal bleeding, and he needed to stay put. But the company was like, if you don't drive, get your stuff and get out, and pretty much left him on the street.
They wanted him to drive after he was injured? Oh.
Yeah. They towed the truck away and
Wow.
left him. I mean, some of the stories we hear, like the gal that I told you about with the cat, she's pregnant. She's pregnant, and they left her in this town, population 600. I said, I'm going to send you some money to go get a cup of coffee. We're going to figure this out on the phone. Well, because of the pandemic, you can't go and sit in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
So she's
Right.
standing
Oh, my
out there with a
gosh.
cat carrier on the side of the street. And we're like, now I have to give a shout out to Idella Hansen on our board of directors, and as one of the founders of TIER. She called the mayor's office, the town restaurant, everything, and we ended up finding them a place to stay for a couple nights and figuring it out. But it's sort of a collective effort of drivers helping drivers, for sure.
I think you've got some wonderful programs here. I hate to interrupt you, Desiree, but we're going to be going to the top of the hour news. This is Desiree Wood I've been speaking with on the Truckers Network radio show. Founders of Real Women in Trucking and Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders. Definitely check out these organizations on the web. They're very worthwhile. I want to bring you back. You've got some compelling messages here, Desiree. Thank you so much for being on TNCRadio.LIVE with Tom Kelly and me. We want to discuss this further and educate people.
Okay.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks so very much.
Thank
Coming up,
you.
we've got the Evening Surge after the top of the hour news. Stay tuned to TNCRadio.LIVE.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Hi, this is Tom Kelly, managing partner of IMSICO LLC, doing business as TNCRadio.LIVE. The website TNCRadio.LIVE and any content or podcast related to the website are copyrights of IMSICO LLC, copyright 2021. All rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of all or any part of the contents in any form is prohibited other than the following. We welcome you to download and play the publicly available podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge TNCRadio.LIVE as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. And while we endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct, we make no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website, the podcast, or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website or podcast for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. For additional information, including details regarding monetization of this podcast, send email to podcasts@tncradio.live.